Today in class we talked about doing operations with functions and also composition of functions. We spent a little more time on doing this. We spent a lot more time on doing these than we did on composition. But I just wanted to go ahead and walk you back through some of the things you might see in your homework. So first of all, one of the sections that you're doing on homework is 5 through 12. This is what most of the examples we did in class were like. We did like three I think, examples of these. Basically where you're doing addition, you're doing subtraction, you're doing multiplication, you're doing division. Also, you're looking at the domain. On here it only asks you for the domain of f divided by g. So that's actually a little bit of a shortcut based on compared to what we were doing in class. We did one a lot like number 10. We did one a little bit like number 9, and that was by design. When we looked at the domains of those, we looked at the domains of all, of the addition one, of the subtraction one, of the multiplication one, of the division one. It's only asking you to do domain for the division. So that's a little quicker than what we were doing in class. All right, so let's look at 1 and 4, the graph ones. The graph ones are really very easy, excuse me, but you have to be able to wrap your head around what's happening here. Notice for the graph ones, it only asks you, it says, use the graphs of f and g to graph h of x, which is f plus g of x. So they're asking you to only do addition with respect to the graph. All right, so pretty much what you have to remember is that f plus g means literally just add f of x and g of x. Now, what is f of x and what is g of x on the graph? Well, if you look at any point on the graph, let's look just at the f function, which is the one that kind of goes below. Okay? There's a point 2, 1 for f. Well, the point 2, 1, if we're looking at the f of x function and we have the point 2, 1, that means when I plug in 2 for x, I get 1 for f of x. Remember that the f of x is like the y. Okay, so what we're really looking at here, if we want to add the f of x and the g of x, it's like you're adding the y value for the f function plus the y value for the g function. All right, let's look at this a different way. For that particular point, this point is saying that f of 2 equals 1. All right, so let's go ahead and start from the left-hand side of that graph. And you'll notice that you have that f of negative 2 equals 2, and that g of negative 2 equals 1. I'm looking at these 2 points right here on the far left of the graph. That's f of negative 2, which is 2, and g of negative 2, which is 1. All right, well that means if I'm going to put those together, that I can do f of negative 2 plus g of negative 2, and that will give me the f plus g of negative 2. So that's 2 plus 1 from over here, and that's 3. So in other words, f plus g of negative 2 is 3. Or you could say the point negative 2, 3 is on f plus g, which we were told to call h of x. So you're basically just adding the y values. When x is negative 1 on this one, we're adding 0 plus 1 to find the new y value, which is 1. Okay, so when x is 0, we're adding 0 plus negative 1. So you could do that for all of them. All right, now that kind of spills over into what it says to do to check your answer for 13 through 26. In 13 through 26, there's 2 ways to do it when you are asked to do something like, let's do 16. F plus g of 1. That means the same thing as f plus g, f of 1 plus g of 1, right? All right, so I could plug in 1 into the f function and then plug in 1 into the g function and then add them. So let's do that. F of x, they say, is x squared minus 1. So f of 1 would be 1 squared minus 1, which is 0. G of x, this is up in the directions above there that it tells you that g of x is x minus 2. So g of 1 is 1 minus 2, which is negative 1. So if f plus g of 1 is going to be f of 1 plus g of 1, then I'm adding 0 from here plus negative 1 from here and getting negative 1. So that's one way to do it. And what I would call that way is that I'm plugging in my numbers from the start. Like I'm plugging in my number into the f of x function, plugging in my number into the g of x function, and then I'm doing the addition. The other way you could do it is you could go ahead and do the addition first. I could do f plus g of just plain x. I could figure out what the equation is going to be for the sum. So in other words, f of x plus g of x, which is x squared minus 1 for f of x, plus x minus 2 for g of x, which simplifies to x squared plus x minus 3. And then I could plug in 1. So I could go ahead and put in my 1, and I get 1 squared plus 1 minus 3, that's 1 plus 1, which is 2, minus 3, which is negative 1, which is the same thing I got up here. So you can either plug in the numbers first and then add, or you can go ahead and figure out what the equation what the function is going to work out to be after adding, and then plug in the number. So like in 13, I could go plug in 3 into the f function, plug in 3 into the g function, and then add them. Or I could take what we just did. We just added them and simplified and said, okay, that's the addition of those two, that's the sum of those two, and plug in 3 into that. You should get the same answer either way. 15, you're subtracting. You could plug in the 0 at the beginning or at the end. 17, you are multiplying. 19, you are doing division. Notice that none of these ask you for the domain, but it's not a bad idea to go ahead and start thinking about the domain. In 22, 24, those get a little bit more challenging, so let's look at 22. 22 says f plus g of t minus 4. Really, still, we could go back and we figured out f plus g is going to equal x squared plus x minus 3. So I could plug in t minus 4 into that and be done. Or I could say, well, let's see, that's f of t minus 4 plus g of t minus 4. And I can go plug in t minus 4 into the f function. The f function from the directions again is x squared minus 1. So that's going to be f of t minus 4 is going to be t minus 4 squared minus 1. That's t squared minus 8t plus 16. Remember to do FOIL. And that gives me this. So that's f of t minus 4. And that's going to go right here. Let me go ahead and put it up there. I'm going to do it different pen. T squared minus 8t plus 15. Plus, and then I go figure out what g of t of minus 4 is. Meaning I plug in t minus 4 into x minus 2. And when I do that, I get t minus 4 minus 2, which is t minus 6. So this is going to be t minus 6. Okay, remember that as you're going through any videos I make, you should feel free to pause, try it on your own, then see what I got. You should feel free to rewind. You should feel free right now. Notice I did not finish this problem for you. That was on purpose. So go ahead and try to finish it yourself, and do it from start yourself, actually. Go ahead and go back to the beginning and see if you get to the same place I did here, and then finish it off. And actually it's going to be what? T squared minus 7t plus 9. So that's what you should get for 22. So that's all operations with functions. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I'm going to go ahead and do a separate video on some of the problems that we do composition with.